I'm Gupta. I'm here with ARC. I'm one of the research directors here. I study all kinds of process automation, uh, whatever that entails, and also digital transformation studies. But I'm really big on automation. I got into automation when I was a kid. I loved camshafts and timing chains, very early automation like you would see in the 1800s, 1700s. And that spurred me on to pursue automation. I am convinced that the way we're going to achieve much of our sustainability goals is through better automation and the technology that we have available today. A little housekeeping, if you would, please make sure that your cell phone is on stun or vibrate. At the end of the session, please provide feedback through the app. You can click a little star next to the session and provide your feedback. That'd be great. And if there's, want to encourage you to keep in touch with the app to see if it, maintain any changes, see what's going on. If you've not been scanned, they would like to scan. Make sure you scan your badge and make sure just keep track of who's attending what. But you can go back and do that. And again, I want to encourage you to silence your phone. All right. So when we talk about sustainability, who doesn't want to feel like they're in the middle of the woods around fluffy animals, feeling awesome about what they're doing? When you think about sustainability, this is usually what we see in the news about how awesome it would be, right? And when it comes to sustainability, I'm also a real big fan. Anyway, I like puns. I apologize ahead of time. So let's take a look. When we think about sustainability trends, obviously the WEF has been a big proponent of pushing different things. There are 21 different steps in their plan. I've picked out these 3 as pertinent to automation, because what does automation do? Automation optimizes. Automation keeps us safe, and automation optimizes our energy usage. So I think that's very important to keep in mind. These are goals that are consistent with what is being pushed from a political standpoint. When you think about this report, which I've provided a link to, also provides a Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3. You've probably heard of those. That if you're going to have those, you've got to be able to track it and you've got to be able to report it. There's 3 types of reporting in there. You've got emissions reporting, fugitive emissions, process emissions, and mobile emissions. Those would be anything transportation related, right? Okay. Scope 2 emissions are the indirect emissions that happen when, say, you're buying electricity from the grid and it happens to be a coal-fired power or natural gas. Those would be part of your Scope 2 emissions. Scope 3 emissions are things like the employee driving to work. That would be Scope 3. They're not to a point where they're going to start reporting that yet, but don't be surprised if it starts. That would make a very interesting situation so far as keeping track of it, but we're not there yet. Okay, we had done a survey a few months ago on the challenges that end users are seeing around sustainability. What I thought was really interesting is finding the right support technologies, measuring, tracking, but I think one that really bothered me from an industry standpoint, probably bothers you, is a lack of effective standards and frameworks. That's going to be really a challenge going forward. I think they're going to shake out pretty soon, but we're still kind of in a place of gray as opposed to black and white. When you look at these are the with the red arrows are the ones that I feel are pertinent to automation, that automation can address. Obviously the measuring, the driving business value, but the other one at the bottom is the insufficient investment. I think many of us in existing plants already have a lot of the technology you need You just have to use the other part that you're not using, right? So, and by that, what I mean is traditionally in a DCS, you may have upgraded it. Maybe you've upgraded it from, you had it installed initially in 1985, you did an upgrade in 95, you came back in 2012, you upgraded to the latest, but you're doing the same thing you did in 1985 with that technology. So there's a lot of potential still in what you've bought. So, okay. The other challenges that we see in the market is a trust of that technology. We start talking about greater and greater automation. We generally start talking about less and less people interacting with the process, and that's a trust issue. At some point, you've got to trust that technology to go forward. One part of that, or one aspect of that trust equation is cybersecurity, and we've got a whole track on that. And you're not in that track, so this is awesome. But that's another challenge that we see with these technologies. Labor contracts and labor relations tend to be an issue when you start talking about automation. One of our customers said he's big on AI, and he was talking about it. AI, and he said that AI is not going to replace us, or it's not going to replace people. People who use AI are going to replace people. We've got to have that mindset that as automation traditionally has been added to our companies, to our processes, our employment has gone up and our productivity has gone up. So we tend to think automation replaces people, but that's not been proven to be the case. What it does is it changes the jobs that people do. It makes it less mundane. You're not doing the busy work anymore, okay? We have challenges acquiring talent. Everywhere you go, people want to know how to acquire talent. You are now beginning to enable or beginning to utilize technology that puts you in competition with Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and you want them to come to your plant. And that's a tough sell. How are you going to do that? Oh, how do you go back? There we go. Okay, so solid maintenance practices, the more automation you have, the more you need to make sure your maintenance practices are top-notch. So if you're still using a reactive type of maintenance, there is a place for that, but the predictive types of maintenance, you're going to be needing those as well. Because especially if you think about the supply chain and you think about the lead times on getting new pieces installed, that's going to come into play because you can't be down, right? Okay, and then the current regulations. You've got there's current and the future regulations. How are they going to affect you? I'm not sure. Some countries, not necessarily US, but some countries have a minimum employment requirement. That's going to be an issue for some, especially as they automate. They got to figure out what to do or how to upskill those people so they can maintain them and keep them employed. Any of this resonate? You can raise your hand. Okay, I'm getting the head nods, so okay, good. All right, so where do I feel automation fits? So if you look at what we need to do to be more sustainable, you can see that what you see automation does fits perfectly, right? Automation optimizes, it minimizes, it creates a safer environment, it makes it more secure. It allows you to do remote access. So when you've got people, when you want to deal with you got people in certain areas of your company that they need to access another area that's geographically distant, they have access and they can help you out and keep you up. The ability to measure and report, and also the ability to retain knowledge. One of the things that's a real hot button for me is the ability for companies to institutionalize the knowledge and not let it go out the door with retirement, right? So we're still retiring about 10,000 people, 10,000 boomers a day. We call them boomers. We are now getting to a point where Gen X is retiring. Okay, let that sink in a bit. So we've almost gone through all the, what else do they call them? I guess it'd be whatever, call them boomers. Baby boomers. We've almost gone through the whole stack. And those are the guys that have all that wisdom. You know, you go, hey, I don't know what's going on with this machine. Call Bob. Bob comes out, he's 64. He's been there since 18, working, cranking wrenches. And suddenly he's gone. He's the one that can walk through the plant and he can hear a problem. And you don't have that anymore. And you don't know how to fix it. But automation can help with that because you can change the diagnostics and all that stuff that goes with it. All right, I went backwards. Okay, so this is my, let's talk a big picture slide, okay? We get all this stuff in the news. I got this off of Our World in Data. And if you notice, I don't have a little laser here, so you're gonna have to go with me. So Oceania is like Australia, New Zealand, that area of the world. 1.6% of the greenhouse gases come from those countries. If you look at South America, 6.2%. And it's growing a little bit, but it's decently flat. Africa, coming up at, a little under 8%. But they're growing, right? If you look at Europe, Europe's dropping, but they're at 12% of the global output. North America, we're at 15. So most of the people in here, we're part of the 15% of the greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. But look at Asia. Okay? 52%. That's a big piece of the pie. And the reason I want to bring this up, I'll get to it a little bit. Let me step back. So let that sink in. China is has over twice the output as America, as the U.S. Okay. Any Canadians in here? Okay. So your per capita output is worse than the U.S. per capita output. I thought that was interesting because I'm not thinking that at all. I wasn't thinking, but I thought it was interesting. Anyway, so here's another thing. So we compete globally. We're seeing some onshoring and things of that nature, but we still compete, or many of us compete globally. Your chemicals, your natural resources that you bring in, et cetera. If you think about China has, there we go, 1.2 million, or almost 1%, over 1% of their population suffers from malnutrition. There's a death rate there. And 70%, about 70% have access to clean sanitation. If you think about the Chinese government, you think about Xi Jinping, and I saw this in a video, so if I misquoted, hopefully I don't, but Xi Jinping, at 10 years old, his father was thrown in prison. His mother was forced to renounce him. His sister at the time committed suicide, and he was forced to live in a cave in rural China during what they called the Cultural Revolution. You fast forward to today, he's the top of the very Communist Party that did all that to his family, and he knows that the only reason he's there is if he keeps China economically viable. Okay, I think that's an important component of this. If you think about India, India is in some ways in a worse case. These people are poor, and these countries are poor, but these countries are Asian. This is Asia, okay? The other thing I think is interesting is worldwide there's 3 billion people without access to clean fuels. These people don't want to be, it's 3/8 of the population, right? That's almost 40%. That's a big piece of the pie. When you're competing with these people or these countries, you've got to keep in mind what their motivation is to be sustainable. They don't have the same motivations that we do in this country. And it's important to keep in mind because if your company is going to compete with these companies from these areas, You've got to change, you got to keep this in mind as you do your sustainability, because you have to stay economically viable in a global market. Okay? So this is my little soapbox piece. We need to endeavor, as an industry, to make scientific and technological progress to create energy and products that are clean, readily available, and cheap. Because people don't want to be poor. You can't keep Asia poor because of sustainability as an excuse, right? We need scientifically sound, holistic solutions, not political posturing and narcissistic sound bites. Hopefully that doesn't rub anybody too wrong, but we need to be, we're the engineers, we're the technical people. We need to be honest, and we need to push back when it's not reasonable, okay? And making the world a better place is not about polar bears and glaciers, it's about people. And if we keep that in mind, we'll be successful.